welcome back to the channel. What we're going to be doing in this video is carrying out a replacement of the Serpentine belt, the auxiliary belt, and its associated tensioner. The tensioner, let's pull it out of the box, looks just like that. It's just an idler wheel with a big spring behind it, and when the tension's off of it, which we would achieve by removing this, it tightens the belt up. But we'll come on to that in a moment. What we're going to be doing, I'll turn my torch on and hopefully we can see it, is we're looking at this down here, this wheel here. That is the tensioner. Now, as you can see, there's not a great deal of room in here, and with these massive hands, it's going to be a bit of a challenge, but we'll give it a go and see how we get on. Okay then, the first thing we're going to do in order to get good access is we're going to remove this top panel. It's easy to get off, it just pops off like so, and then give it a bit of a wiggle and it'll be out. Pop that down to one side. Sound deadened in and annoying the hell out of me. For some reason it doesn't want to stay up, it's almost like it's shrunk slightly in over age, but we'll manage. Right then, okay, what we need to do is on the middle of the wheel, I'll demonstrate on this one, middle of the idle wheel, there's a big bolt. What we need to do in order to take the tension off of the belt is we need to rotate this whole assembly. Now that is achieved with a socket, but it's got to go clockwise, so it's as if you're tightening the bolt. If you do it the other way, all you'll do is undo the bolt. If you do it as if you're tightening it, it will rotate the whole assembly. So that's what we're going to do next. Okay, it's a bit awkward to get into here, but it is doable. Get the socket on the end of the bolt on the pulley. Once you are on properly, give it a rotate. And the tension comes off the belt, as you can see, on top of the alternator here. It's gone a bit loose. Just give it a wiggle off, just like so, and then once you've got the belt off, you can release the tension again, and then you can pull your ratchet out, and there we go. So that's the belt part off. What we've got to do next, let's move that over there. What we've got to do now is we've got to take the belt out, and then we can look at removing the tensioner. Now, what is worth doing before we do this is just taking note of the routing of the belt, because otherwise it can sometimes stump you if you don't know which way it's got to go. So just take note of it, and then when it comes to putting the new one back on, you won't have any dramas. So what I'll do, pull this one off. Take it off of everything. A bit awkward, as I said before, not a great deal of room in here to work, but just take it off one pulley at a time and you'll be fine. And there we have it. In fact, as you can see, it's actually sitting roughly in the correct orientation anyway, so that's roughly how it's actually supposed to sit, which is kind of odd how it's done. That's considering it's a rotating assembly. But what we'll do, we'll have a look at the belt. It's not in terrible condition, it's a bit shiny, but it's not really that cracked or crazed. I've certainly seen worse, but we've got the belt anyway, so we're going to change it. So let's throw that down to one side. Now, what we need to do next is come on to the tensioner. Okay then, right, now the belt's off, all we've got to do now is remove the tensioner. Now, what it does is, basically it sits in the front of into a recess in the front of the block, and it's held in position by one bolt. To get it out, all we need to do is remove that bolt, and then it should pull out. There may be a little bit of resistance to it coming out of the block, because it's been in there, that's probably been in there since the car was new. The bolt is a Torx bolt, and it's a T50. Again, like before, trying to get the belt off, access is limited, so it's a bit of a pain. What I'll do, I'll put a picture up now, and as you can see, I've ringed in red the head of the bolt, so you know what it is you're looking for. If is right in the middle of the tensioner. So this just gets removed, and then we'll be able to pull the tensioner out. It's a bit awkward to see, being quite dark down there, but I've got a torch, so let's get my tool on. Right, there we go, we're there. And it's quite tight. Come on. There she goes. Alright then. Now it's loose. We should be able to get the bolt out. Oh, there we go. Got there in the end. Oh, looks like I'm bleeding from somewhere. No, brilliant. See, this is what I mean by limited access. You end up bleeding from somewhere. Right. So, bolts out. And as you can see, yeah, that's what you're looking for. T50. Jobs are good. Okay, let's put that to one side. We'll need that again later. Now, hopefully, the tensioner will just slide out of the block without any real problem. Ah, right, that's interesting. Did not realise that that was going to be a factor. Okay, tensioner's free to move. What I didn't anticipate, actually, to be fair, is that this idler wheel that's above it, hopefully you can see that, it's the one that I'm rotating here, but idler wheel actually covers the top of the tensioner housing, so that idle wheel is going to have to come off. So what I'll do, I'll grab a screwdriver and pop the cover off that wheel, and then we'll have a look at getting that off. Okay then, what I've done, I removed the cap off the front of the pulley, and as you can see just there, hopefully you can make it out, underneath, just under the pipe, that is the bolt that holds the tension. It's just an idler wheel, it's not a tensioner, it's just an idler wheel. That bolt is also a T50, so what we need to do, pull that bolt out, and then the idler wheel's out the way, and then we should be able to get the tensioner out, no worries. So get the T50, T50 there, get it on the bolt, get it cracked off. Right. Okay, that wasn't too bad. That was that came fairly easily. Just remove the bolt. And there we go. There's the idler wheel. The bearing in that sounds really good. So I'm glad I didn't buy one because there was no need. Now that's out of the way, shouldn't be anything stopping the tensioner coming out. And there we go. Well, I say there's nothing stopping it apart from the fact that there's no room to remove it from the car. Let's take it underneath these pipes, pull her up under here, and there we go. And there's the old one. I don't know if you can hear that. Sounds a bit rough. The bearings in there are probably all squared off, and that's a noise you can hear in there. It's seen better days, so I'm glad I've got a new one. Now what you will see here is the orientation of them. As you can see, this one's been pre-tensioned in that position. It just makes it easier to get the belt on afterwards, and then what you can do is pull that out, and away you go. But yeah, so what I was going to do now is basically the reverse and fit this tensioner. There's a little lug there, which is obviously for the orientation once it's in the block, so you can't get it wrong. Just put it in, give it a little wiggle, and you'll feel it pop in. So once it's in, that's got to be in its little recess, and it's at roughly the 1 o'clock position as you look at it from the front. What I'll do, I'll pop up a little picture here, and as you can see, it's roughly in the same roughly orientated with the hole for the idler wheel. So that should help you when you come to locating it. So let's get her in. You'll know when it's in because it won't sit flush, and then all of a sudden, once you've got the lug in, it'll just feel like it's fell into place. So let's get it roughly orientated. And then give it a little wiggle. Come on, there you go. Okay then, if you come, bring the camera in down here. Hopefully you can see that. I've got the tensioner in and the bolts in, and it's in the orientation that you would expect to find it in. So if you leave the shipping, like the little shipping rod in position, the tensioner actually points downwards once the bolt's in place and that little lug is engaged. You'll know when the leg's engaged because if you look at the pulley from the top, you will notice that the pulley on the tensioner actually does line up. There's the pulley, there's the tensioner pulley. It does line up with the alternator. As you can see, they do line up with each other, and the air conditioning pump also is right there. So you can see they're all in line, so that lug is engaged. If the lug wasn't engaged, the tensioner would be further forward than these two pulleys here. So what we need to do next is tighten that bolt up, and then we can get the idler wheel back on. Okay then, there we go. Hopefully you can see that. I'll shine a bit of light down there. Hopefully you can see that's the new tensioner all in position, and it's all lined up with the other pulleys, as you can see there. Right, and there's the hole for the idler wheel right there. So that's the next thing we need to put in. Okay, so idler wheel. The bolt on the idler wheel I didn't mention before, but the bolt on the idler wheel is actually captive, so you don't have to worry about it falling out and ended up on the under tray underneath and then having to worry about trying to find it. So what we're going to do is get this in place. As you can see, that's where it goes, right there. Just there. Get her started with your fingers. Don't get a tool on here yet, because obviously it's an aluminium block and you don't want to be grollying a steel bolt into an aluminium block and then cross-threading it, because then you're going to have to drill it out and helicoil it, which is obviously not going to be easy because all of this will have to come out. So just take your time, get it started with your fingers first, just like this. It will go in all the way up to touch my finger. And there we are, that's it up to touch. Then we'll get the tool on it, just like this. Give it a little nip up. Don't over tighten it, don't make it too tight. It doesn't need to be overly tight. Just make sure that it is secure. Once it's in, get your cap, little cap here, pop it back onto the pulley and it will click in place. There you go, well, just like that you heard it. And there you go, that's all sorted. That's all sorted. Now, what we need to do, get the belt on. Obviously you remembered the routing from last time. For those of you that didn't pay attention before you remove the belt, what I'll do is I'll put up a picture right now, and it shows the orientation for you to follow. So I've made it fairly easy for you. Basically it goes around the outside of some pulleys and on the inside of others, so just bear that in mind and you shouldn't go too far wrong. Okay then, moving on to the belt then. Okay, here's the belt, the new belt. As you can see, it's ribbed on the inside and on the outside because it goes round the outside of some pulleys and on the inside of others. So fairly straightforward. It's just getting it into position. That's the pain in the ass because we've got pipe work in the way. So let's feed it in. Feed it in, get it around everything we want it to go around. So we'll start off with the alternator for now. It goes around the outside of the alternator, it goes under the idler wheel, over the top of the water pump. Okay, alright then, I can't quite see what I'm doing now. Let's have a quick gander. Okay, over the top of the water pump, then it goes around the outside of the crank before it comes between the water pump and the crank pulley to grab the tensioner. But what we'll do, we'll get it round the outside of the aircon compressor first. Sorry, round the inside of the aircon compressor first. It goes around the inside of the aircon compressor, and then there's another idler wheel below the aircon compressor that it goes around the outside of. So that might not make much sense because it's hard to demonstrate on video because there isn't a great deal of room in here. But hopefully, when you look at the picture that I put up earlier, you'll be able to understand what it is that I'm actually talking about. Okay, we're on that idler. We're around the crank. Okay, so what we need to do is just pull it between the water pump and the crank pulley, which is easier said than done. A lot easier said than done. Especially when it wants to fall off of everything. There we go. Right. And then hook it over the new tensioner, and then go back. Once it's on there, go back and make sure it's still wrapped around everything else it's supposed to be, which, as you can see, it's come off the water pump. Let's come on, get on it. And now it's come off the crank. This is a constant battle. Obviously all of this is assisted by the fact that we've left that little rod in the new tensioner, keeping the tension off so we can fit the belt. Okay, I'm fairly confident we're in the right place. Just make sure it's all seated correctly on each of the pulleys. Okay, hopefully you can make out how it's been routed from this. It goes around the inside here of the aircon pump, and then round the outside of that idler wheel below it. Goes straight below the crank, up over the crank, and then around the new tensioner, back underneath the water pump, over the top of the water pump, under that idler wheel, and then up back to the alternator. Hopefully that's as clear as mud, but the picture should paint 1,000 words, as they say. Right then, that is the belt routed. All we've got to do now is get our 16mm socket back on the bolt on the new tensioner, and then we'll be able to pull that rod out and then release the tensioner under the spring pressure, and it will tighten the belt up and apply the correct tension. So that's what we'll do now. Okay then, so 16mm socket, you're better off with a 6-sider. I didn't point that out last time. 6-sider is always a good idea if you've got one. That way it's less likely to slip. So get her on the tensioner, and as I said before, you go as if you're tightening, not as if you're undoing. And then what we need to do is, once we take the tension off this little rod, is pull the little rod out. So I'm going to give it a push. Little rod's gone loose. There's the little rod, and then if I release the tension, you can see the belt's gone tight. And then all I've got to do now, take the tool out, and that is the belt tensioned the way it's got to be. As you can see, it's nice. Okay, that is the job done. Now, it's easy. It's an easy task in on paper. It's just access that makes this job a pain. As you can see, my hands are cut to shreds because there's loads of sharp things in here, and you know, that's just it's just the nature of the beast. But it's a job that you can perfectly easily manage at home, with a couple of sockets, some ratchets, and a couple of screwdrivers. Okay, so all I need to do is now is put the cover back on, and then I just need to really start the engine just to make sure that everything's working, because obviously provided that the aircon's working, the alternator's working, and the water pump's working, then everything should be good. The belts should be fine. But yeah, that is that job done. If you have any questions, then feel free to pop them in the comments, and I'll do what I can to answer them. But anyway, that's that done. Thank you very much for joining me and watching this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you all again for the next one. Thank you very much. Bye now.